Hi, it's Kathy from Raven Vintage. Let's talk about scraps. So I would like to talk about why scraps matter to a junk journaler. If you're new, you might find this interesting as to, because I'm sure at some point you thought we were all a little crazy for the amount of scraps we keep. I also am hoping to for those of you that might be a little ashamed of how many scraps you have, that maybe you'll come out of this feeling not so bad about your stash. And also I want to talk about a few things: why we keep them, how to store them, how much is too much, ideas to use them, and then at the end I'm going to give you a few tips for keeping your scraps manageable. Now, that being said, I am not an expert. So this is actually a little bit of a self-help video, let's call it, okay? So what I have in front of me is one of 3 large bins that I have of scraps. I've sorted one bin, which I'm going to show you in a second, to test out this theory that I have. And this is not all the scraps I have. I also have, I think, 2 or 3 file folder boxes, like letter size file folder boxes, 3 of these, and a few shoe boxes of scraps, and then I think 1 or 2 project scrap boxes, like my cigar boxes where I keep my what I'm working on, a certain project that I haven't transferred to the big scrap box yet. So this is a scrap box that we're going to sort while I'm chatting with you, and I'm going to keep it on the chair beside me because there might be personal stuff in here, so that way I can grab it before I put it in front of the camera. But first I'm going to show you the box that I already sorted. Now this is what I would call the initial sort. So there was a book of that you would get on at a gift shop with specialty paper. So this is actually going to get I deconstructed it, and that'll get transferred over to a specialty papers folder. And then I ended up with a little bundle of teeny tinies. I ended up with a bundle of what I'm going to call smalls. We'll talk about that in a second, how I figured out my categories. Also, in this particular box, I had a mountain. I found a few oddball things, like end cuts from laminated projects gone wrong. I have a whole, let me get rid of that, a whole stack of these. What these are, technically, are end cuts from me making some hand stitched notebooks, and these are the papers inside, but these are the end cuts from the great big huge sheets. So those were a category on their own. I ended up with a bundle of strips. There's this pile of mediums, not too bad, and then I had 1 pile of full 8.5 by 11 sheets, printables, you name it. Okay, so that's 1 box got sorted. It's a little smaller than it started. At least it's sorted. So that's the initial sort, and then there'll be other steps beyond that, which we'll talk about in as we progress through. So let me just get this one back out of the way and set that aside. So like I said, I have 3 of these. And now, after doing that, I feel much better about how manageable it's going to be. So I'm going to talk to you while I'm sorting. I'm not going to really do too much explaining about my decision making of what I'm keeping and what I might throw in the recycle bin. I'm just going to try to make really quick decisions, okay? Yeah, so let's get started. So I'm going to start with 1 category of 8.5 by 11, what I'm going to call full sheets. So there'll be 1 pile of those. I'll have a pile of medium, which would be as far as I'm concerned, around that size, half a sheet. And then I'm going to have a pile of smalls, which I'm going to consider to be this size, or roughly a postcard or 4x6, if that helps. I'm then going to have a pile of, so that will be my large, medium, small. Then I'm going to have a pile of what I'll call tinies. And then I'm going to have a pile of strips, which are technically offcuts, but they're more strip style. And then I am going to, if there are any, I'll have a pile of end cuts from 12x12s, scrapbook paper pads. If I have any end cuts from there, like a full width of 12-inch, I will make a separate pile for those. So let's start off with this pile here as my large, and let's get to our conversation about scraps. So why does scrap matter to a junk journal maker? Well, a couple of things. A couple of things that might not be obvious to someone new, but to those of us that make junk journals, scraps matter for a number of reasons. Now let's talk about one, which I guess we should say what scraps are. So scraps are, a lot of it's going to be paper, and it could also be ribbon, and it could also be fabric. So like I said, end cuts, strips, things that we made a mistake, things that were left over from projects, misprints, that sort of thing. Those would all be scraps in my opinion. Now, if I find, I should have mentioned also with my piles, if I find any scrap fabric or ribbon, I have this cup. So this is right on my door hanger, which is a shelf hanger with all my ribbon and lace. And it's just, actually I'll show you how quick it is when I'm looking for something. I can just dump this thing out and I can find a ribbon, for example, for a closure, or a ribbon to edge a pocket or a page, or I might just be looking for a small piece for a tag topper, whatever. These are valuable. This is good stuff. Like, it might look like garbage to someone because it's just, you know, like the end of something, like so small. But you and I both know, as a junk journal maker, that's got value. We can do something with that. So this is really simple to keep a little jar like this. Oh, one idea I had, I probably should save this for the end, but I'll just tell you now, this would be a good project to do. You could go through and make a bunch of bows and just have a little box of bows ready to go to add to journals, something like that. So anyways, they just all stuffed back in here. I don't care about crinkling them up because they're all pretty small. But as I go through and find scraps, if there's any fabric scraps in here, this is the jar they'll go into. Okay, so back to my piles. Large, medium, small strips, end cuts, and tinies. Okay, so just quickly I'm going through, and I'll do this while I'm back to the topic at hand. So as junk journal makers, we know that scraps hold a special place in our craft room, and pretty much everyone has them. I don't know, maybe there's the odd junk journal maker that just strictly does not keep scraps. It's possible. It is, I bet you there's, if there are people that choose that route, I bet you there are fewer of them than there are those of us that actually decide to keep our scraps. See, there's a fabric piece. That could have been just from me dumping that out now. I don't know. But, oops, there's another one. Fabric. As a junk journal maker, we know that scraps are, like I said, they hold a special place for us. They're part of our supplies, right? As much as our printables, our Tim Holtz stuff, or, you know, our purchased items or thrifted items. Here's an example of the quick decisions I'm making. That's garbage or recycling, so I'm just not even going to explain that to you. If you see me doing this under the desk, it has no further use. I know that right away. You might see me hesitate over a few pieces, but if I think it has absolutely no further use, then I'm I'm not going to explain every one, but you'll see me do that. If you see me keep little pieces of plastic, the reason I keep these, or acetate is because a couple of things. I could actually use that as a window in something. It's obviously the back of a sticker or stamp, but also when you're working in your journals and the glue is wet and you want to move on to the next page, you might want to cover up what you just glued with this until you know it's dried, and then you can remove that, and that protects your pages. So I will be keeping all different sizes of this. Okay, so, and then I know that looks really ratty, but I also know that's vintage. So here I said I'm not going to explain stuff, but in case you're wondering why I'm keeping certain things. But anyways, back to what we were doing. So anyways, keeping scraps, it actually is, why do we keep them? Because it's economical, for one. It's eco-friendly crafting. It reduces waste. We're repurposing materials. It's a very smart thing to do. I think we want to do well by the planet, and that's one small way we can do that, is by recycling our materials. We really do emphasize sustainability in junk journal making, and that's through keeping scraps and using them, not just keeping them. The idea is hopefully that we do use them eventually. Okay, so technically that's like a 12 by 12 end cut. So I'm going to start that pile. It's going to be off camera. Sorry, it's way over here, but I was going to do it underneath, but I keep grabbing from this pile. So it's definitely cost effective. It makes this craft definitely more cost effective if we can, you know, keep these little end cuts and such and reuse them. That's wonderful. It saves us money, right? Like this is all usable stuff. The problem becomes when we don't use it and we have too much. That's when it becomes an issue, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. Some sort of a recipe on the back of that. Not sure. Don't know. This looks like a napkin, but I could use that. So yes, I'm gonna keep it. And that will go in my tinies. I'm gonna start a tiny pile. The other thing is unique materials. Sometimes we come across some really neat paper, like rice paper or vellum, or some vintage envelopes or something, and that's cool stuff. And of course we're going to keep that. Let's keep that and use that, because when are you going to get a chance to actually, you can't just order that off Amazon. So yeah, we're going to keep some of those papers that are just, they're just kind of unique, right? Especially like your trims, your fabrics, your lace, that sort of thing. And of course, like I said, the irreplaceable vintage items. Here's a pocket I started as actually a flip of some sort, so I'm going to use that at some point. So it does really help us keep the costs down for sure. And I think that's smart. Okay, look at this. So in my scrap bin, somehow a bunch of envelopes got, oh, these are cards that go in the envelopes. And I see a few more. So instead of putting, Oh, I see a few things. So here's a few materials in this scrap box that instead of putting them back where they belong, I just threw them in my scrap box at the end of a project. Tisk, tisk, Kathy. So I'm going to set these aside, and sometime after the video, these are going to go in their proper home. They don't belong in the scrap bin. These are actual supplies. So that's not what I meant by unique materials. Those are actual supplies that should not have been in the bin. So that just goes to show you another good reason to sort your scrap bins out is you never know what you're going to find in there. So I forgot about those labels I had, and now that I know that I have them again, I'm excited. It's kind of like Christmas, opening Christmas presents. Like, I didn't know that was going to be in there. So anyways, when we have these scraps, there's a few more of those too. When we have these scraps, it inspires us to for some spontaneous ideas sometimes, and unexpected creative combinations too. So it's oops, some happen, who knows. There's a tag. Here is a whole bunch of end cuts. So I know what these are from. I made a bunch of, I made a few things. I made traveler's notebooks, and I made a bunch of gratitude journals. So these were end cuts from the scrapbook papers I used. So here actually, you can see I just cut the entire paper pad and it's still together. So I knew with my guillotine industrial cutter I have, I just cut the entire paper pad. So this is like end cuts ready to go. So that's going in this pile over here. And I forgot I had those because they were buried in this bin. Tickets in here, so technically this should be, well, I'll talk about that, about pulling out ephemera. We'll talk about that later on. And cuts. So let's talk about storing your scraps. I have obviously these plastic bins, and like I said, I have 3 of them. I also have some shoeboxes, and I also have a couple file folder boxes worth. So other people I know store their scraps in like those plastic envelopes. They look like little, like either with a Velcro closure or a snap closure kind of thing. File folders is another. This would be, it's almost postcard size. Is it medium? Is it small? I'm going to call these medium for now. I have a bunch of shoelaces. Goodness, is it all tied together? It is. Remember what this is from. Probably picked that up thrifting. Can I tie that into something? Put it with my ribbon. Yeah, I'm gonna put that with my ribbon stash in my door. I have one shelf that has some odd size stuff, so I'll put that there. So yeah, that would be something I would really like to hear in the comments below, is tell me, how do you store your scraps? I think that people would be very interested to hear your ideas if it's not something that like I haven't mentioned yet. By all means, share with us. I think it would be great to learn from each other on how you store your scraps. I'm sure there are ideas that I have never even thought of. I know that there has to be ideas, like wallpaper or something. So here's a print from some books I used to do. This is a 30-day gratitude challenge. I did a large size and a small size. So those, I'll use that paper for, there's an old brochure of mine, like a glue for gluing or something. Now you might see me put some like ephemera pieces, like cut out ephemera, in my piles. I'm not separating them yet because that's just like an extra step, and we want to try to make this simple. So that would be your next sorting phase. Once you get things sorted by size, then you can sort each of those piles. For example, I'm not getting any 8.5 by 11s this time. Last time I did, but I would sort those by, say, category, by color, by season. And then you could sort these, same thing, by color, size, whatever. And then you could, from there, separate any of your ephemera, if you like. Obviously, when one of my granddaughters was crafting with me that day. So cute. I'm gonna keep that. Now, some of these you might think, why are you keeping those? Well, because that's vintage, and I know that I might put that on a tab or a cluster or a tag. So yes, I would never judge what you're keeping, because I myself have my own reasons for keeping. Okay, so what is this? So garbage. Let's get rid of garbage. And here I have 2 pads of paper. So I'm going to actually set those aside because they're in the wrong bin. This is a beaded tassel. See, as I'm going through, remember I was talking earlier about it being sentimental? As I'm going through here, I'm remembering which journals I was working on and where these came from. For example, I did a guest book for my aunt's cabin up north, and that's where that wallpaper was used. It was a journal I did for my Aunt Cindy and Raoul. So yeah, it's sentimental sometimes, right? You just have good memories about them, and you'd be proud of yourself for all the stuff you've done over the years, all the things you've made. But storing scraps, let's get back to talking about that. So bins, shoe boxes, file boxes, envelopes, plastic or otherwise. Let me know. Let me know in the comments below how you store your scraps. I'm excited because we're getting close to the bottom of this bin, believe it or not. A lot of small stuff at the bottom here, like a true scrap bin. I just found some more items that clearly don't belong in here. These are little chalkboard labels. They don't belong in a scrap bin. And then the entire pile while I'm done, before I'm done talking to you, but I'm just about at the bottom, so that believe it or not, that's the bottom. So when you're storing your scraps, I'm doing this initial sort. So I told you we talk about that. So I'm doing this initial sort and by size, large, medium, small, strips and cuts from scrapbook paper, and tinies. Those are the sizes. Those sizes will probably work for you too, because we mostly have the same kind of stuff, but you might have a different category. Once you've done your sort by size, you could then go to those bins and you could sort by color. You could sort by season. You could sort by medium, like what kind of paper. Like you might want to put all your vellum in one spot, or you might want to put all of your neutrals in one bin. Now, something else to consider when you're storing, do you travel to craft? You might want to have a couple of options for smaller containers for taking your scraps with you if you're crafting with your scraps. Looks like my granddaughter's work again. That's, I know what that is. You might wonder why I'm keeping some of these small things. It's because some of them I know are actual vintage and worth keeping. That, however, is not. You could also sort them by, well, like size, but usability, if that's a word. Whether, you know, what kind of projects, like journal covers, for example, or you might have a bin for that you keep for, like, you know, when you're gluing and you want like a backdrop paper to keep your desk clean or whatever, you might want just a pile of super scrap, like actual scraps for that. Now this I would keep because I would more than likely use that. Maybe some of these words as backdrop, but definitely those page numbers from the Edith Walden, 100% I would use that. So here's some cool old vintage onion skin. Most definitely keeping that. Here's a book cover. I've obviously, or a jacket, like a dust cover. Once you get your stuff sorted, like that second sort, you might want to label your bins or whatever container you've decided to use. So label them by season. Oh, there's a quilt board. Label them by you know what I mean. Label them to whatever makes sense for you. You could color code labels for your boxes. But anyways, after you've stored everything, or sorted, I should say, once you've got things sorted, at some point you need to make a decision on how much is too much. When is it enough? So obviously, if you don't have room for all of it, you need to make a decision on what you're keeping. And something I'm part of a, I won't say too much about it just yet because I haven't really announced it yet, but I'm part of a oh, it's for slides, a collaboration on decluttering coming up next week, I think. And well, who knows by the time you watch this video. And one of the, it's a 5-step process that they go through, and one of the categories, or one of the first 3 steps are easy. I won't get into too much of it now, but they're simple decisions, quick decisions, which is kind of what I'm doing now. Just quick decisions without putting too much. You don't want to stress out about it, right? One thing I learned about the decluttering process is when you don't have enough room, you start with your favorites. So say you would put in your bin your absolute favorites first. And then if you've run out of space, well, then you know you've got the good stuff and you've kept the good stuff. And then you're not concerned. And then if you have stuff left over that doesn't fit into your space, you know, the home of where your scraps are kept, if you've run out of room, decide if you're going to donate, sell, or recycle basically what you have left. And that helps make the decision making a lot easier. So you start with your favorites. You keep your favorites first. So in this case, it might not be about favorites so much as it is usability. There's that word again. So there's a photo. So when I do my second sort, I'm going to say, put that with my ephemera. Or my, actually, I'm going to put it in where it belongs. It's going to go in the vintage photo file. There. Almost done. Do you believe it? Do you believe it? And that's it. Okay, so I'm going to keep a couple of these aside for making little envelope types of things. So this is what I ended up with for what I would call large. So I'm going to put that in the bottom. This is my medium pile, size medium. So clearly that could be sorted into a couple different sizes, but basically that's the next size up. So I'm just going to put that at the end of the bin. That's my mediums. And then I'm just going to make a little separate folder for the smalls. Kind of like that. And again, when I go to do a second sort on this bin, it's just sorted by size right now. I can just grab this and just deal with this. And in there was ephemera. There's, you know, I can decide from there what I'm going to keep, what's usable, if it needs to go to a different home. For example, this here is a finished notebook. I would put that with my ephemera box of things that are ready to add to a journal. These tickets would go in my ephemera box. They don't need to be in my scrap bin is what I'm trying to say. But for now, it's separate and it's going back in the bin. And then we'll do another one for the tinies. It's this stuff. Now to me, this stuff is worth keeping. Perhaps this would be a great thing to pull out one day to make clusters. Or a bunch of tabs, or you could do little collage tags as well. So an idea to keep these from flying all over, just grab your stapler quickly and just kind of make this into a pouch. So that can go in the bin and all your tinies are together. And then this is what I ended up with for strips. So we all know that your strips could be used for layering belly bands, making belly bands. You can use these for tags. You can use these for the edge of pages to reinforce a page. You can use these as collage strips. There's a whole bunch of things we can do with strips, right? Now you could wrap something, oh, that ends up being a small. You could wrap something around that as well, but these I find are just going to tuck nicely on the side. And then I ended up with, as far as end cuts go, I had a couple pieces of burlap. I had some wallpaper, some large pages. This is scrapbook end cuts. And then I had these. So that is my, what I would categorize as end cuts. That's what I would call that pile. And then that's just going to lay on top. Okay, so here's what it looks like. I know it still looks like a dog's breakfast, but it's sorted. It's actually manageable now. I know that I can come in here and I can grab the end cuts. Here's my strips on the side. Here's my mediums. There's the tinies. And then this bundle here is the smalls. So now I can just grab that bundle of smalls and deal with that however which way I want to. But I've actually made more room. I can tell. There's another, look at this. I don't know if I can do this without toppling it all over, but see how much room there is now? Like there's more room in here just by getting it sorted rather than just throwing it all in. And what did I pull out of it? Also made room by pulling out this stuff. This stuff doesn't belong in here, so it's going to go to its home, proper home. Of course, you've sorted your scraps, you figured it out, you've labeled it, you've decided what you're keeping. So now what do we, let's start using our scraps. So you can do some collaging, you can make master boards, and then of course those master boards you can cut up into tags, pockets, belly bands. You can make a bunch of pockets ahead of time, tiny pockets, tags, journaling cards. You can layer. So you could cut up, take some of your, for example, your mediums, and you could cut a bunch in a uniform size. So you could do a bunch of 4x6 postcard size. You could do a bunch of 3x4s, 2x3s, like artist trading card size. Just have a whole bunch of them cut the same size. You could have a bunch of them that are the same size, pre-cut, and then have a stack of those so that they're ready to grab for whatever, you know, for the different things that you would use them for. So that's another idea too, is like to clean up your piles basically. Fabric ones, of course, same thing. You could do collage or a mixed media. Tag toppers, tassels, journal covers, toppers for paper clips. Another thing you can do is you can put together a pretty bundle of scraps and you can swap with a friend. So that might be some craft inspiration. That might be kind of cool. Oh, you could do a scrap challenge, which actually I have going on right now. So I have a 15-minute scrap challenge on my Instagram. This scrap challenge. So you grab your scrap bin and you make whatever you can in 15 minutes, even if it's just a simple tag. Just pull something out of your scrap bin and make something for 15 minutes. It's just to encourage people to get your scrap bins out and start using up your scraps, because look what happens if we don't. They pile up, they take up valuable room in our craft room, and we could actually be using those and saving some money. So let's talk about, before I let you go here, let's just talk about some tips. And like I said, I am no pro. I'm actually trying to learn some of this stuff myself. Well, that's a pretty tassel. Let's talk about some ideas for managing your scrap. How about the 1-year rule? If you haven't used it in a year, date your box. If you haven't used that stuff in a year, throw it away. Recycle it, I should say. I will never do that. I'm just saying that might work for some people. That will never work for me. Not doing that. We talked about a scrap challenge, sharing and trading, and then of course there's scrap inspired projects. Like you could specifically make a mini journal or some sort of an ephemera folder specifically made out of scraps and then trade that with a friend. That would be kind of a fun thing to do. Scraps are a reality for us. They are, like I said, a reminder of our creativity and our resourcefulness. So let's not look at them as clutter, as long as we make sure they don't become clutter, but let's look at them as a junk journal supply that we use and start treating it as such and giving our scraps the same amount of value in our craft room as far as storage goes that we would with other ephemera. And maybe you already do, and I'm just been that person that throws scraps in a bin and forgets I have them. But let's start elevating the value of our scraps to, let's just consider it a junk journal supply, and then maybe we'll use them more and save ourselves a little bit of money on buying, you know, ephemera. We could make our own, or maybe it'll just encourage you to get a little more crafty and start making some more stuff. I'd really love to hear in the comments how you use your scraps and how you organize your scraps. Well, thanks for having this scrappy conversation with me, and thanks for hanging out with me tonight and watching me sort my bins. I've got 2 down, 1 more to go of these big kind of plastic things here. And then I might do a second video showing how I do the second phase of sorting and cutting and trimming and all the things. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.